There's a part in the book that mentions that you're actually one of the first Bengali born in Italy. Do you know if that's like a truth or is just kind of something your parents told you to make you feel welcome in Italy maybe?
You know what, I do like to think it's a fact because my dad was probably one of the few from the community who moved to Italy. There were not that many people, especially in Palermo. I think I was probably one of the few. I think I was the first female Bengali to be born, at least in Sicily, I can say.
It was hard for you to go out and date a boy or have a boyfriend and all that stuff. So tell us what would happen if your parents would find out that you had a boyfriend.
This whole dating thing gets seen as like crime. Like you're not supposed to be doing this. They're not supposed to be having anything before marriage. But if you get caught, like there are consequences. And I feel like it changes between whether you're female or male. If you're female, I feel like there are very harsh consequences. And I've seen this. Like I've actually witnessed it because I've seen my own friends who basically got caught. And then as a consequence, they would be like sent back home in Bangladesh to get married. But they wouldn't get married to their boyfriends. They would just get married to someone that the parents would choose.
Do you have like any resentment? Like how does someone try to find that balance of I want to try to respect my culture and what it brings to me, but I also want to find my own path?
You know what?
Welcome to Getting Curious With. Today we have another guest. Her name is Urmi Hossain. Urmi was, a person that went through some interracial struggle back in her childhood years and has been through a lot. And we're trying to share her story with you guys so that, if you're going through something similar, that you could get some inspiration and know that you could get through it as well. Also, Urmi has written her own book. The book is on Amazon. You could take a look at it. So the book is called Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. You could download the ebook as well from there and dive deeper into her story if you wish. So Urmi, before we get into the more specifics of your story and all, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, some of your where you were born, your childhood experiences, and then we'll get into more of the details of the story later.
Sure, it would be my pleasure. I was born and raised in Italy. And my parents come from Bangladesh, so I basically lived my whole life in Italy. That's where majority of my childhood was. And I was born in this town in Sicily, which is called Palermo. And I lived there for 9 years. I did my elementary school, and then we moved around within Italy. So we basically went from the south to the north, and we also went outside of Italy. We lived for a year in UK, and then we came back to Italy. And then my last, I would say, location before moving to Canada was Milan. And I basically grew up my whole life in Italy. And when I was growing up, there were not that many immigrant kids. I was one of the few, actually. I was probably one out of like 20 or something like that. So there were not that many, especially when I was growing up. So I grew up with a lot of like Italian friends. And this is where my book comes from, where I do talk about a little bit about the struggle because of like trying to fit in between two worlds. My parents are from Bangladesh, so basically in my household it was very like strict, severe, only like it was very Bengali type of household, whereas outside it was very much like open-minded, and it was very much Italian, I would say. So that's where the conflict came.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I'm also of Italian origin, except I was born here, so I wasn't born in Italy, but my parents and my grandparents came from Italy after the Second World War. So I speak a little bit of Italian, but I'm not going to embarrass myself. Yours is probably better than mine.
Come on, Evan.
Yeah. So, you speak that, your parents chose to move to Italy. Can you tell us why that was like a good location to move to? Why, your parents decided to immigrate there? Was there a specific reason for that?
I never asked them, because this whole like moving, it literally happened before I was born. So I never really asked them. All I knew that before they moved to Italy, they were living in Bangladesh, and they wanted to have a better life, better opportunity, better future. So that's where they were hesitating between a few countries, and Italy was one of the options. And I think back then there was a big flow of immigration from like Bangladesh, India, and basically everyone would try to go in Italy through the south. So going through Sicily was much easier. That's why I think that was like probably the easy way, and I think that's why they just decided to stick there. But there wasn't like I don't know if there was a major reason behind that. I think it was just a good opportunity to move there, basically.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so there's a part in the book that mentions that you're actually one of the first Bengali born in Italy. Do you know if that's like, you know, a truth or is just kind of something your parents told you to I don't know, make you feel welcome in Italy maybe?
You know what, I do like to think it's a fact, because and I do kind of believe it, because my dad was probably one of the few from the community who moved to Italy, and there were not that many people, especially I would say especially in Palermo. I think I was probably one of the few. And so when they moved, they did not have a lot of friends from the community. They didn't have any family. They had to like literally, like, it was only after he moved that he had his brother moving. And so I think I was the first female Bengali to be born, at least in Sicily, I can say. Because
that's a pretty cool yeah.
Yeah, because basically afterwards what happened is everyone would enter from Sicily, and then they would move like towards other places in Italy, towards the north or the center. So that's why I think it's almost like a fact. I do like to believe it's a fact.
That's great. I mean, it's a good accolade to have for sure. So yeah, a little bit more about, you know, your childhood and all that. So your unique is pretty unique, and your name is pretty unique. And I'd like to. There's a part in the book that mentions kind of the origin of your name. You know, what it symbolizes. Can you tell us a little bit about what it means, and in what language as well, like what it symbolizes?
Yes, so it means wave, like the waves of the ocean. And I never really paid too much attention to the meaning of my name, but then like I didn't really care too much about the meaning of my name until people would ask me, and that's how I started to make a connection. And I do feel like my life is more like a wave. I think everything that happens in life comes in waves. Happiness comes in waves. Things happen in waves. And the name, it's a Bengali name, and I do like to associate this name with the name of the actress who plays Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot, also her name means wave.
Cool.
And so I do like to see myself as like Wonder Woman, you know, because I do like to live life like that, where I try to, you know, give back by volunteering and stuff like that. And so it literally means wave, and that's where also the cover page also of my book, it's waves.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's a cool correlation there.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think we wanted to maybe dive deeper a bit into your teenage years and how you kind of your relationship was with your parents. Can you talk about, you know, your time when you were in Italy? I know like you were in Palermo first, and then you moved to a city called Vigevano, right?
Vigevano.
And Vigevano, sorry.
Yeah, I misled you. It's okay.
Okay, you misled me. But anyways, yeah. So I just wanted to know, like, your relationship with the Italians there. Like, how did the Italians treat you? You know, was there any discrimination or racism or any of that? Or were you okay with them?
No, I never faced any kind of discrimination from anyone at all. Actually, I think it was a learning process from them as well. Like, it was a learning process for me because I was basically trying to integrate myself and assimilate with the whole like Italian culture, but it was a learning process for them because they have never met anyone that was different from them. But I was always very much welcome, and I liked the fact that they were very curious to learn more about me, to learn about my background, why I couldn't do certain things, why I was allowed to do certain things. And until now, all these people that I have met during my childhood are still my friends, and they like learning more about me because, like, right now, I'm probably the only friends that they have who's like not Italian by blood. And so they were very much welcoming. Even my professors, they were always very curious to learn more about me, more about my culture. Every time I would like, let's say, do a presentation, I would bring things more about Bangladesh. They would really be like, they were welcoming up towards that. They really liked learning more about it. So I never faced any kind of discrimination. Although I do know people from the community who came basically afterwards, they did face few discrimination. So I was probably the lucky one, but it really depends. Not everyone is like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of times, immigrant communities might face that sort of discrimination, especially in a culture that might not have been exposed to different types of people. It's interesting that they were open-minded and curious enough to want to learn about you and befriend you. So that's great. But I'm guessing, a lot of the trouble might not have been at school, but more at home, with your parents and maybe the traditions and whatnot, the norms that they were trying to impose on you. So I wanted to ask, like, what period during your childhood or teenage years was the hardest for you?
I would probably say when I went to high school, so maybe like 14 years old and upwards, because this is where you want to do things, you want to try out things, and that's where I had a little bit of more struggle in the sense of like exploring, trying new things. That was hard because it was very much like forbidden. Like it literally was forbidden.
All right, guys, we just came back here. We had a little technical hiccup with our recording, but all is good. We're back. So yeah, on the topic that we were discussing, Urmi, so yeah, you were explaining about, your difficult period that you had. So if you want to continue from there regarding your parents and whatnot, the struggles that you had.
Yeah, so I would say my teenagehood was probably the most difficult part, because I think at the age of like 14, 13, 15, you want to start doing things, you want to go out with your friends, you want to do simple things just like hanging out with friends, going to the movies, going clubbing, trying things out. But for me, even simple things was very much forbidden, like even just doing a sleepover to some of my female friends' house. It was very much forbidden, and because it was of the perception of what the community would say about this, because this was something that not a lot of girls would do. And so because of that, I would say like I really struggled in terms of that. Like here I am growing up in a very open-minded country, but then I cannot live like other people. So I really struggle a lot with that. And it was very hard also from my friend's side to trying to understand like why was this such a big issue, like why couldn't you do these things, because for them it was very much normal, but for me it wasn't. And so I went my teenagehood just agreeing with like everything that I was being told basically.
Okay, so it must have been tough in that sense where you saw your other friends or people having this freedom to discover themselves, do whatever they want, but you were like kind of stuck in between, and you were like, well, this is my life, guys. I can't really do much. I'm stuck in this. I see. Yeah, it must have been hard.
Yeah, so I kind of have a question. So your parents arrived to Italy. I guess they didn't know the language, right? How were you able to kind of learn the language, and or how did your parents do that in the first place as well?
Well, for me, it was just at school. So, I always say Italian is my adopted mother tongue, because I actually speak it better than my own mother tongue. At home, basically, what happened is we would just speak strictly Bengali. And then when I started to pick up on Italian, I actually started to speak also Italian at home. So I would speak Italian with my sister. I still do. And then with my parents, I speak Bengali, but I mix it up with Italian. And then when my parents basically moved to Italy, yes, they didn't know how to speak the language. And I think my dad, he was the first one who learned the language just by reading books, talking to other people. And it was more like do-it-yourself type of thing, and that's how he learned it. And basically, he tried to learn it so well to the point that he could be self-sufficient and find jobs. So he basically learned it, looked for a job, and then he also tried to do the driving test and stuff like that. So at least he could be self-sufficient and stuff like that. And then what happened is, because he knew the language, people in the community they started to go to him for filling out papers, because he was the only one who knew the language properly. me. And then once I started to like learn it properly, he would come to me for like filling out papers, asking me like clarification, what these words mean, what the other stuff mean. And so he relied a lot on us, but he knew how to speak, like he learned it as much as he could after he moved to Italy. And my mom, she never learned it actually. She just knows Bengali. Yeah.
Yeah. Does Italy have any kind of, like onboarding for new immigrants, like to learn the language, to, help you, go get your life set up when you get there? Or did you kind of have to, learn the language on your own, like you mentioned, and no real support that way?
So I cannot speak for what was back in the days because I was like too young to understand this. I don't think my dad went to like a group of like, I don't think there was a program at least back then. We're talking about the 90s. But now, for instance, like I think they do have some programs, especially for immigrants who want to like learn a language or stuff like that. And they do have it also at school for like immigrant kids who are trying to integrate, learn the language and stuff like that, where they have like separate classes to learn the language. But I cannot speak about what was back in the days. I cannot say because I like for me, I was just put into school as like other people and I just learned the language like that.
Yeah, you were born and,
yeah.
You just had to go to school like any other kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes.
I guess also when you're a kid, right? It's easier to pick up a language than your parents that that had to immigrate and then learn a new language. It's always harder for in that sense. Yeah. So there's also another part that I kind of like to touch upon. I know that your parents were kind of like disallow you to learn about other religions and kind of listen in on that stuff. Do they have a specific reason for that? I know they said it might affect your own faith. Is that part of the reason?
Yeah, that was the part of the reason because we are like a family of Muslim people. So I remember like when I would go to school, like I would have a conflict there too because Italy is like a Catholic country. So I went to a school where there was a church inside of the school. And so that was the first thing I would see in the morning. It was a church and there was a crucifix and I remember seeing nuns all over the place and wondering like what's going on there. And so there was a conflict there. And I remember like not attending religion classes because there was this fear that maybe, I get influenced, I get brainwashed and maybe change my faith, even though like in all the religious classes, I attended all of them regardless of what I was told. And he didn't know that I was like, none of my parents didn't know that I attended those religion classes because in this class we would speak about philosophy. And so I liked that aspect. Yes, we would speak about other religion, but it was like, for me, it was more an opportunity to learn and enrich my knowledge. But yes, there was this idea in the back of their mind like, oh, what if like she gets brainwashed, or what if she like decides to change faith, because they strictly thought it was just about like the Catholic religion and that's it. So that was the fear that I would like decide one day I'd be like, okay, I don't want to be Muslim anymore.
Okay, so it was that fear that you might change faith and all that. So, but I think it's a good way to look at it, to kind of explore on other religions and understand other religions and what they believe in, because it makes you understand more about humans in general, right? Like, for example, like, I'm not Muslim, but I could still learn about the Muslim Islam religion and then learn about that. And it would help me grow as a person for sure. So I think it's a good thing that you explored the other religions while you were there. So so apart from the religion aspect, I know like another kind of thing that your parents would kind of enforce on you is, the dating aspect. You kind of touched upon that earlier, where, it was hard for you to go out and date a boy or have a boyfriend and all that stuff. I'm sure that must have been hard because, especially when you're a teenager, you kind of want to, find someone and be with that person, whatever. So tell us what would happen kind of if, your parents would find out that you had a boyfriend. What kind of punishment would that entail? I know you kind of touch upon that in the book a little bit, so I kind of want to hear about that.
Yeah, so this one, like this whole dating thing, it's seen as like, it's like seen more like a crime. Like you're not supposed to be doing this. They're not supposed to be having anything before marriage type of thing. And so because of that, like a lot of the people, they still do, but it's like behind their parents' back. Like no one knows what you're doing, but if you get caught, like there are consequences. And I feel like it changes between whether you're female or male, because I feel like for male it's so much easier, But if you're female, I feel like there are very harsh consequences, and I've seen this. Like, I've actually witnessed it because I've seen my own friends who basically got caught like talking on the phone with their boyfriend, or got caught like on the street, and then as a consequence they would be like sent back home in Bangladesh to get married. But they wouldn't get married to their boyfriends, they would just get married to someone that the parents would choose. And for some reason, I don't know why, the community thinks that's the solution to the problems, because they're like, okay, we'll just give her away to like this new family, they will take care of her, they will fix her. That's how they like to see it, and that's how like all the problems will be solved. Because the whole issue is that if someone gets caught, the whole thing is that it's gonna look bad in the reputation. Like, it's just gonna taint the reputation of the family, even though, you know, in like other communities, not seen like that anymore. So that was the main concern. Like, if you do get caught doing things that you're not supposed to be doing before getting married, then these are the consequences. And I've seen it with a lot of people that I know. Then what happened is some of these girls, they stayed in the relationship, and some others, they actually went through a divorce, because like, this is absurd, I feel like. I also feel like the things have changed through time, because yes, this was forbidden. Even now, no one wants you to date, but because we have evolved, there are people that do date, and then eventually when they're ready to get married, they introduce the person and be like, okay, this is the person I've been dating. And it's somehow like they're accepting of this whole dating thing, because then when it's time to get married, it just gets harder to find someone. So that's why they're open for you to find someone, so at least when it's time for you to get married, we don't have to go through the struggle of like finding someone for you.
Okay. Yeah. So this kind of this cultural, not, I don't know, maybe not a tradition, but this kind of punishment almost, where, you know, they bring you back to Bangladesh and they force you to an arranged marriage. Is that something that's like really widespread in like South Asian cultures, or is that kind of, you know, certain people where it's like that?
So I don't know if you watched the TV show that there is right now on Netflix, the Indian Matchmaking. I don't know if
I
you
saw a little bit of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
those are arranged marriages. They do exist. They do happen. I don't think there is anything wrong with those. I would say that things have changed between how it was done back in the days and how it's done right now. Because back in the days, what would happen is that you just show a picture of a potential candidate, and if both party says, oh yes, I like her, that's it. And the next thing you know is that there is a wedding that it's set. And basically they like to believe that first is marriage, and then you learn how to appreciate and love the person. And so this is how it was done. They do work, because I've seen, like, I have all my uncles and aunts, they got married this way. They are still together with their partners. But nowadays, and this is how it's shown on Indian Matchmaking, which is what happens right now, is that you have a biodata. So basically, you have, it's sort of like a resume, potential candidate. So you have a resume that says like where you're born, your age, your height, where your hobbies, where your parents, if you have siblings, what you have studied, and stuff like that, where you work. That's it. And then you give it out to people. And then if there's like a match based on like interest, then you have the two families getting together. And if the two people like each other, then they get to know each other. So they get to know each other, and then if they want to go forward, they're gonna like exchange numbers, and then after that they will decide if they want to date, be in a relationship, and then they will decide whether or not they want to get married to each other. So this is how it's being done right now. I've seen it. I do see, like, I have an aunt who tries to match people. So it does happen. There is also love marriage. In love marriage, it's like you do it behind your parents' back, and then once you're ready, you just tell them, okay, this is the person I want to get married to.
So why do you think some arranged marriages work? Like, you know, thinking about that, it seems like, you know, it would be forced, and, you know, there'd be, like you mentioned, you know, there are a lot of divorces, I'm sure, that result from arranged marriages. But why do you think some of them work based on, you know, in your inner circle, your close circle? Like, you probably see some arranged marriages that work pretty well. Why do you think that is?
I think, at least the one from the past, I think the reason why they work is because there is this, because divorces are seen as a taboo. And so people
Okay.
would never say anything about it. They were just so afraid about their whole reputation, or what the community would think, that they would be like, okay, I just accept this is my truth, this is my reality, I'm just gonna go forward with that, which is why no one would like go against it. But nowadays, whether it's like love or arrange, I do see that when someone is unhappy, they do take the step to like
The
be like,
steps,
okay, I
yeah.
just want to be out of this. So I would say before it was just the fear of speaking up about the issue, but now people are less afraid of like raising the concerns.
Okay. So like, yeah, the fear of being shunned by the community or your parents, then you would stay in that marriage. So maybe, some of the arranged marriages that quote unquote worked, it was just because people were fearful of leaving it. So
Yeah, they weren't truly happy, right?
maybe,
they were just
yeah.
kind of in it because they had to be.
they just accepted their fate.
Yeah,
kind
it
of
could
thing.
be either way though. Like maybe some people are truly happy,
Yeah.
and it could be that some people are not happy and they still stick to it.
Yeah.
I think, it's interesting how, the culture and everything has evolved where there is still that aspect of the arranged marriages, or maybe the parents or family suggesting someone to marry. This whole thing with the Indian matchmaking, it's almost like online dating, but you have a middleman, It's almost like, or a lot of times, they arrange the marriage because they want you to get married, not like, mess around, date, get to know. It's like, you'll get to know once we, sign the papers. But I think what I'm getting, from your story and, your book is that arranged marriages could be right, but also maybe dating and finding your own person, your own way could be right too. You're not against one or the other. It's just letting people breathe and just have a bit of freedom and not chastise people and shun them just because they want to choose a different path in life.
Yeah.
I think that encapsulates your
It's pretty cool to see also. Well, it's pretty crazy to see the difference between, like the Eastern culture, the Western culture, like here there's all kinds of things like Tinder and, people are just.
This is completely free.
It's completely
here.
free and no one has a care.
But it doesn't
in the
always
world.
mean it works or is correct.
See that too, right? I mean, we talked about how some arranged marriages could fail, but people that meet others on Tinder and, Bumble and whatever the hell, they
have all the freedom in the world.
They have freedom in the world, but maybe they're not happy as well. It's kind of that too.
Yeah, and they also have like dating apps for like just South Asian, or dating app just for Muslims. So they make it a little bit easier to like narrow it down, the market.
Yeah, so it's like, Dad, I gotta, I'm on a Muslim dating website, But
I guess, you got to be careful with, which kind of apps you're using and things, because, you don't know what kind of people you're going to find there as well,
Yeah, some people might pretend they're something when they're not. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Like anything,
Right.
So all of that story with the dating and everything is good to hear. The other thing that I wanted to know about, because you didn't mention too much in the book, was, when you moved to Canada, how did you decide to come here? At what age? And did your parents approve of that?
I don't speak about it because it's a bit personal, and also because I'm not ready yet to talk about it.
Fine.
Because I feel like it just deserves its own book on its own.
Okay.
You want to do
so
that?
it's pretty involved then.
Yeah, there's a whole. I feel like there was a transformation of of myself.
Okay.
But yeah, that's why I don't speak about it. It's because it just deserves its own thing. Eventually, I will talk about it in another
hopefully
book.
we'll have another podcast with when that book
With the
comes out.
second book, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, that's right. I was just curious because it is like a big jump, right, from there to here.
It is.
And I was wondering what transformation you went through, but that's okay.
It was a big jump. I would say yes.
Yeah. And so right now, we're in Canada and you've learned to live here and you work in the financial industry.
I do.
Which is pretty interesting for the fact that, there's also a chapter regarding money and how your father and parents didn't, talk about money. It was for the boys. The boys will go out, get the money, the female work at home, but yet you decided to go in that industry. How did you decide that? Was that like a push because they didn't let you learn about money?
No, you know what? I never thought I would have taken this career path. I think when I was much younger, I was like, I want to be a therapist. This is what I told to myself.
Okay.
I was like, I
Okay.
want to be a therapist. And then when I moved to Canada, I went to an international business major, and I used to like hate it. Like, I cannot explain you how much I used to hate it. And I had finance as my minor, so I was like, you know what? Let me try this course and see how I feel about it. So I took a course. I was just in love with it. Like, I was literally in love with finance. I cannot explain you. So then I was like, I want to switch it. I want to have this as a major. And I liked finance a lot. Like, I liked going to my lectures. I liked taking the exams. And then because I enjoyed this so much. Like, I never felt that I was working hard for it. Like, everything that I was doing, it was like effortless. So for me, it was easy. And then I could see it in my grades, and then I did the honors program in finance. And then after that, like, I started to work in the financial services industry. Then I was like, I want to continue studying, so I did a bunch of other certificates in finance. And then I recently got the charter, the CFA charter. So it was a very big accomplishment for me, and I was very happy about it. And even then, I knew that it was hard, but you know what, I enjoyed actually studying for it. And I never like knew that I would have enjoyed this major so much, and I don't know where it was coming from. I think I just had natural talent for maths, and I think there is a lot of analysis in finance, which is what I liked about it. And I feel like finance is always changing and is very dynamic, and because of that, I think I could see that it was very much resembling my personality, because I have a very dynamic personality as well. And so because of that, I think it was like a love at first sight. And so I went through this path, and then I tried to think about, okay, how is finance taught in every culture, especially how was it taught in my household. And I remember thinking that it was never taught to me. Like, I just remember learning that $1 makes a big difference, so make sure to save.
But maybe the fact that you weren't taught about that at all just made you more curious. Kind of like it was hidden from you all your life, and then you kind of discovered it, and you really got passionate about it. You know?
I don't know, probably. And then I started to see how finance was never taught. I could see that it was never something that they ever teach to women, because women are seen as the bread maker and stuff like that. But we can be both. We can be the breadwinner, we can be the bread maker. That's how I like to see it. And I feel like, especially, I know that finance is a taboo topic in every culture, and I saw it in my own household, how none of the women in the family knew how to handle know how to handle the finances at home. Like, if something happens, they have no clue about where is the bank account, where is the the pin to access the bank account. They have no clue at all. And I think it's important as a woman, regardless of your marital status, to be independent regardless of everything. So that's why I was I tried to learn it as much as I could, especially when it came to personal finance. These were things that I had to learn on my own, because they never teach you about this at school. If people expect that, because you're a finance background, you must know everything. But honestly, I had to learn personal finance by reading books and watching YouTube videos. And so I think it was just something that I was curious about. And it's like you said, I was just curious about it, so it just brought me towards that path.
Yeah, you just had a natural knack for it, and maybe the fact that it was kept away from you might have piqued your curiosity more, and then once you got into it, you loved it. And I guess good thing you like it, that you're not doing this, just for other reasons, but because you love it, and maybe I guess want to share that info with other women, other people that might not be exposed to it. So I think that's great what you're doing. So also on the topic relating to your parents, so do you have any resentment against the way they raised you, the traditions and norms that they imposed on you? How does someone try to find that balance of I want to try to respect my culture and what it brings to me, but I also want to find my own path?
You know what? I wish things were different, but then at the same time, I wish they were not, because I feel like they did teach me how to be a very disciplined person. Because they were so strict and rigorous. Because I remember when I was growing up, all I would do was study, but it wasn't because they told me to study. It was because I was at home. So I was like, what would I do? I'm just going to study. I'm going to read books. And so because of that, I think I just became much more disciplined as a person. So that helped me a lot in everything that I did so far. When it came to career, when it came to studying, when it came to pursuing the CFA designation. So that's one thing that I learned from this. And definitely also like I think the lessons that I learned, they made me much stronger, and they made me think against all these rules, I want to say, because I took so much time to read and learn more about it. I feel like I started to have an opinion of mine, and I started to realize that, you know what, yeah, everything they taught me was right, but also what I think is not wrong. And so that's, I would say, in that sense, it did help me. And so this is why I feel like I would never change it. I would never change it. I think these are lessons that we need to learn to grow as people.
So no regrets in that sense, for sure.
They're life lessons, yeah, at the end of the day. They make you who you are. Or else it would be a different Urmi.
Yeah.
Exactly, you know?
Yeah, it wouldn't be in Canada, you know. Wouldn't be a different person entirely. So for sure that shaped you as a person, and yeah, you got to embrace that, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
So also in the book, you mentioned that you have a favorite quote. So
I have so many. I forgot though which one I put.
Okay,
We'll
it's okay.
remind you.
I'm gonna read it to you, and you're gonna tell me what it means to you, and you know how it has improved your own life. So it's actually a quote from Gandhi. So the quote goes, "Be the change you want to see in the world." So it's pretty short and sweet, but I think it's pretty impactful just with those few words. So tell me what it means to you and how it's changed your life.
It does mean a lot, and it means a lot, especially because I want to change the status quo in everything. It's not just my personal life, but also my professional life. I am a very altruistic person, and I do like to give back, and I feel like the only way we can bring change is by bringing awareness and by educating people and leading as an example. So for instance, like the things that I do on my free time, like even this on its own, like being on a podcast, is just bringing awareness of like there is diversity. You have to be aware of all these things in different cultures. I use my other tools like YouTube, LinkedIn, as well as my blog to educate other people, and lead by example is by taking all these actions. You know, like I'm part of like different organizations about women's empowerment, and I try to raise awareness. I try to show like this is how you can learn, and I'm also a mentor for different organizations for young women. And even in my professional field, I try to break the barriers. You know, like it's a woman working in finance. Even in finance is very male dominated. I've seen it. I went to many interviews. I saw many people, many men working in the financial industry, but I never got intimidated by that, because I think you have to be the example. You have to, you know, pave the way towards that. So even in my professional life, in every aspect of my life, I feel like I always follow that we have to be the change. Like we have to like change the status quo, basically. So that's how I like to live every day, basically.
Yeah, I mean that's a good mindset. I mean, the younger generations have to be the ones to kind of push the boundaries and try to find new ways of living and better ways of living, whilst also, you know, being empathetic and considerate of like the old ways, the traditions, and see how can they be improved. Because that's the thing. I think at the end of the day, like, you know, you could say like, oh, my parents are controlling, they're this and that, but that's the best that they knew. That's what they were taught, and
Yeah, that's all they knew, right?
or they had this sense of protecting their culture and what they knew, so they didn't want that to be eroded by some other idea that they thought was a threat. But, you know,
Yeah.
you try to show that you can have both worlds.
Yeah. So what would you give as advice to, you know, other women, other people, man or women, that are going through something similar to you? Do you have any advice for them?
Oh. I have so many things that I could say, honestly.
Maybe that are in a similar situation with you, that, yeah, their freedoms are limited, and, you know.
So I would say, especially when you're like limited, you have to find, or you have to create an opportunity around you. Because, you know, and this is how I did it. I knew that I had a lot to offer to many people, but I couldn't, like, especially like let's say during the pandemic, we were all close at home, but I still wanted to give back to people, and for me to do it, I had to think of a way to do it. And so I created the opportunity by, seeing, can I create a blog? Can I create a YouTube channel? Can I write a book about it? And so I feel like you always have to find or create an opportunity for the things that you want to do. And I would say always follow your gut.
Yeah,
that's
a good
very
message for
important.
Sure. Yeah.
You will always be scared and stuff like that, but if your guts are telling you something, then it means something is meant to happen. So I usually like to follow that. I like to follow my curiosity, as the podcast say, and so that always
our podcast name.
Yeah, that brought me to many new things, I would say.
Yeah.
Gotta be curious. Yeah.
That's kind of what forced us to start this podcast too.
There you go.
Like kind of
just wanting to learn
about different people and
their stories,
different stories. Yeah, exactly. So it's important to be curious and to follow your instinct and take action. Also, if there's an issue, not to just sit around and wait until it gets better. Like for yourself, I think you took the steps in order to break free from all that I guess oppression that you were going through.
Yeah.
And I imagine it must have been hard since it is a tough part from your life that you're gonna maybe share later on. But I don't think it was an easy process.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It wasn't an easy process, but I'm glad that I took these steps because they just made me realize what I'm capable of.
Okay. So you do see that your life has moved in a better direction.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That step, because I think maybe one last thing that I want to mention is maybe some people who are in a similar situation like you with parents like that might fear that if I do this, maybe they might disown me, or they wouldn't want to talk to me anymore, or there's that fear of like I'm gonna be detached, or they're gonna be like, oh, once you get out of the house you can't come back in, or we won't support you. So
and it happens. I've seen it.
Happens,
I have seen it.
Yeah.
It happens. It does happen because
it's tough.
The reputation, the pride is so much bigger than anything else, that no one cares about the rest of the stuff, how people feel, how their kids feel. They don't care because the reputation is like the most important thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always the what will people say.
Yes, exactly.
It always comes back to that,
Yes.
It's like, even us, even in my family, sometimes always like, oh, don't talk too loud. The neighbor's going to hear you and going to think. I'm like, I don't care about the neighbor things.
Exactly.
Focus on yourself, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, every family has their, their issues and, their
trying
their
to
rules,
keep their reputation.
Their reputation, right? But, it's good to break free from that if it's obviously, controlling your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I really like to thank you for coming on our show. We really appreciate it. Now we've kind of been going on for close to an hour now. So I'd like you to kind of plug your social media, tell people where they could reach you, tell them about your book a little more, and we'll make sure to include all those links in the description.
And what other prospects, goals for the future?
Tell us about your goals. How about that?
All right. So people can find me on LinkedIn, and it's called Urmi Hossain. I also have a blog. It's called myways.ca. I have a YouTube channel called Urmi Hossain. I have an Instagram account. It's called Urma Mio. I actually have, I want to say 2 books, but one is an ebook. So basically it's an ebook called Your Italian Summer, and basically I actually just created it, and I have like expressions and tips for people that want to travel to Italy, because everyone keeps asking me like, can you share some tips? I was like, you know what, I'm just going to create an ebook. So I created an ebook, and then I have my book, which I self-published. It's called Discovering Your Identity: A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle, and it is available on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's
and what
good.
about that, potential new book? Is there any date for that? Or?
No, there is no date, but it's
Not
a
yet.
work in progress. I also want to do a TED Talk. That's also another project that I have in mind.
That's a good ambition.
Yes,
For sure.
yes.
Awesome.
Hopefully we'll see you one day on there.
Yeah. Just one last thing, because I know that you're in Montreal, right?
Yes.
Do you mind asking where you went to study finance?
Concordia.
Oh,
Concordia
okay. That's
University.
interesting because I went there too. Yeah.
So you're there, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's cool. Small
Maybe we
world.
cross path. Who knows?
No.
No.
Oh yeah.
No? Did you graduate like recently?
I studied
Well,
mechanical engineering.
Oh.
I wasn't in finance,
Okay.
but I graduated in 2019, so a few years ago now.
You're too young.
How long have you been here already in Canada?
In Canada, I moved in Canada in 2010.
2010. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so quite a few
10
years.
Okay.
Great.
That's cool. Alrighty. Well, thank you for coming on again. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you.
again.